Wow, what an incredible conversation. Hi, everybody. You've probably seen plenty of me this week. I'm Jay Tucker. I run the Center for Management of Enterprise and Media, Entertainment, and Sports, otherwise known as the Center for Memes. And I just want to welcome everybody to our fifth and final day of the Pulse Conference. First, I just want to give a huge thank you to our interactive arts team, our Fenway group team, Steve, Chris, Ross, folks who have been producing this event behind the scenes the whole week, handling every little glitch and question with professionalism and class. Hopefully you guys have experienced a pretty seamless conference, both from the perspective of the conversations you get to see, but also the networking and other experiences we've provided for you at Hopin. And, all the credit goes to them. Any blame goes to me. We've got a great fifth and final day ahead of us today. And I want to talk a little bit about what you're going to see. First, today is the day that we would typically have the conference in person. So normally we would be doing the Pulse conference on the UCLA campus on the Friday, typically a Friday in February, and this would be the one. This was the one we had originally planned for this year. This year, we've saved most of the traditional elements of the conference for today. In part because our students, our MBA students, don't have classes on Fridays, which means we can use more of the day and we know that they'll be able to attend and participate. So there are a few things going on in the background that you're not aware of. Through this week, we've been running a case competition that we do every year in partnership with Paramount Pictures. One of our alums, Howard Shea, has been partnering with us for years to create this incredible experience where we have student teams, not just from UCLA, but all over the country and actually a few schools internationally compete to pitch new ideas and solutions regarding the future of the entertainment industry with an emphasis on film, television, and digital. This year's case competition has been going on for the last couple of days. I believe the final round is about to start in a little bit. And we will announce the winners of the case competition really at the end of the day later this afternoon. So stay tuned for that. We're really excited about that. Secondly, when it comes to awards, as I've teased the rest of the week, I'm super excited that we get to honor today our Game Changer Award recipient. For those of you who've been following the Pulse Conference for the last few years, you know that's when we recognize individuals, traditionally, who have made an incredible impact on the trajectory of the entertainment industry. So it's not really kind of a lifetime achievement award. It's really for folks who have done some things that are innovative or changed some aspect of the business or made a real big dent in the industry in some way. So past people, Jeffrey Katzenberg, founder of DreamWorks, and Ice Cube, founder of Big Three Basketball, and others, Jerry Bruckheimer and so on. This year, I couldn't be more pleased to honor the WNBPA, which is the Players Association for the WNBA, which throughout 2020 showed unbelievable leadership. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the day as well. I'll get to sit down with two members of the Players Association's executive committee, Elizabeth Williams and Shanae Ogwumike. So that should be a wonderful conversation. Up next is the conversation that embodies the spirit of this entire week of experiences. As you know, the theme this year was 2020 foresight. The idea was that we would look at what was going on, what has happened, and kind of the events of 2020, the trials, tribulations, decisions, challenges, opportunities, innovation. We looked at all of that as a way to frame what we think the next 5 years in the industry is going to be like. What are some of the big ideas, innovation, opportunities, business models, consumer trends that are going to shape the way we look at media, entertainment, and sports going forward? That conversation, you've seen it from a bunch of different angles. We talked about sports, we talked about new experiences, we talked about diversity and inclusion, production, talent pipeline, and so on. Today, we're going to talk about essentially the business ecosystem. And, I'm lucky enough to have at my disposal an incredible journalist, Cynthia Littleton, who's the co-editor-in-chief at Variety. We met years ago when we were partnering on a big data summit. And I was always blown away by her knowledge of the industry and her understanding of the business, but more to the point, she's just a wonderful person to have in a panel conversation because she's great at kind of getting everybody else, that is us, to see the wisdom of the people on stage. So I couldn't be more pleased to hand over our signature panel to Cynthia Littleton, who's going to take you through, I think, the next 50 minutes or so. Should be a wonderful conversation, and then we'll come back and get to our game changer. So, Cynthia, thank you so much for being here, and please take it away.
Jay, thank you so much for having me. I was really excited to be asked to do this, because this technology just gets to the heart of what every marketer, every content creator, every person that is active in the entertainment business, any person that is active in the retail business is studying the issues that we're going to talk about on this panel today. And we have a really nice cross section of disciplines and expertise to really dig into it. So again, thank you all. I'd like to just quickly introduce the panelists, and we will start talking. We are joined today by Joshua Rebholz, Senior Associate Athletic Director for UCLA. Good school. Joining us also is Dan August, Vice President of Strategy and Ticketing for the Los Angeles Rams. Also on the panel is Katrina Conn, General Manager of Customer Experience for Teradata, a big data analytics firm, probably the growth industry of the future for sure. And last but definitely not least is Simone Deocares-Lengyel, Senior Digital for Converse, the shoe brand that is really has enjoyed ubiquity. And I was just thinking the generations of UCLA students that have trod around that campus in their Chuck Tees. It's got to be going on 4 or 5, or probably more like 6 or 7 generations by now. So thank you all for joining us today. As virtually any panel about just about any topic that might talk about these days, to start with talking about the year that we have come through. We are just, as everyone knows, we are just about to lap 1 year since we all were introduced to all kinds of new words like pandemic and lockdown and quarantine. This has been an incredible time for our culture, for our society, for our national economy, the global economy. Every business, no business, no sector has been undisrupted by the pandemic and by the digital technologies that have only accelerated and have only become more meaningful in our lives as we are living through lockdown. So I want to just start by throwing this out to all panelists, what during this unprecedented time when so many people have been online and connected, what are some of the big learnings that you have taken away from this incredible period, particularly about consumer behavior and consumer habits? I know that in varying degrees, all of you have made a real effort to keep in touch and keep tabs on your target consumers. What are some of the things that you've learned about behavior during this time? Throw it open to anybody who would like to join in.
Well, I'm happy to start. Okay, go ahead. You ladies first. Go ahead.
Simone, go ahead.
Thank you. It's a great question, Cynthia. I think the things that have really come up for us in the last 9 months since really the shift of working from home, pandemic, and quarantine has really been a few things. One of them is the expectation that brands lead with their values and how important that has become for a consumer and really changed, I think, the consumer journey, thinking about behavior, culture, and values of the brands that people are going to connect and opt into. Another one, I think, is the creativity that exists in our communities and amongst our consumers. I think the rise of micropreneurs and the fact that there's just been so much content and creation coming from really this time when there is a lot of anxiety and depression and boredom and lack of connectedness has been really incredible. And I think that's also made brands have to think through how they tap into that creativity and co-create with their consumers as well. And the last one I would say is connectedness. And, all of the platforms that are out there that are really built around tribes and connectedness have gone from really niche to much more mainstream. So if we think about, the shift and rise in Twitch, Discord, TikTok, etc. All these places where people were aggregating to share their communities has really become much more mainstream than it once was.
And TikTok is a market on many levels would seem a marketer's dream. You are handing people tools to get creative, and we've seen, in varying degrees of success, we've seen marketers come into that platform and encourage people to actually create content that actually has a sponsor message. It's just an incredible cycle. Dan, Josh, any thoughts just on the general theme of what you've learned about your consumer, your target audiences during this time?
Happy to be here. Thank you very much for the question, and certainly a privilege to be with everybody today and represent UCLA, which we all know is an unbelievable institution. For us in athletics, it's our experience, our content is the live interaction, and when you take away the live aspect and you make it purely a television or a digital asset that we now offer our fan base, we don't allow them to come into the venues and experience what is all a game day experience. It's been very difficult for some of our fans. One, they got it taken away, not just at UCLA, but everything. So as we all know, the world stopped and no more live events, no more concerts, no more engagement, no more social engagement. And so we really worked hard to try to find opportunities to make it as normal as possible, to stay on track with our scheduling and with our events, to provide them the content to continue to engage with our student athletes and our coaches. But it's been difficult, no doubt, because so much about the game day experience and the experience of going to a live sporting event, much like a concert or any other kind of large social gathering, is the interaction with your friends, your family, and that's certainly not in place right now. So we've taken a lot of steps, as everybody has over time, with the digital platforms, certainly social media, a free medium for us to be able to utilize and engage our folks, help them understand who our student athletes are as people, help them understand what they're going through during this time themselves. And then also, not only was COVID going on, but you had all this, continue to have social justice issues come to the forefront, which so many of our student athletes have a voice about, because they're the most diverse group of students on our campus. And so we've tried to allow them that platform to talk about those issues and talk about what they need to see the changes that we all need to see come, while also, again, creating some sense of normalcy, which is difficult, as we all know.
Yeah, it sounds like absolutely a tall order. Dan?
Yeah, I'd say to add to it, I mean, the in-person piece, we were opening a brand new stadium this year in SoFi Stadium, most beautiful, grandest stadium in the world, and we opened it with no fans, which was disappointing. So for us, it was trying to find ways to still bring our members, our season ticket members who pay good money, into the stadium. So not the most high-tech thing, but the first game when we could barely have any staff, I just went around to different seats, took pictures, and then we'd send them to members. And they were thrilled that they could feel like they were there and had a picture from the game from their seat. And then we started doing that throughout the year. And we wound up with a couple thousand people who were happy. And we formed a Facebook group. So I think that focus on community has been a bigger one this past year. And we wound up with a few thousand people of season ticket members who formed this group. And some of them sending us messages like, this kept me alive through the season, like this kept me happy. Just having fellow Rams fans, having people that could come together and talk about a passion were things that they really enjoyed. We tried a bunch of stuff. We tried a second screen experience. Didn't hit as well. It worked with some of our avid fans, but for us, we weren't trying to do too much, but we wanted to try a few different things, see what worked, and then we kept focusing more and more there. That's where kind of Facebook and seat photos and some kind of pick'em, more predictive gaming worked well for us. So I think we powered through it. Not ideal for anyone, but just like that sound that just came through. But I think for all of our members, it's just how do we stay connected, get through it. Now we have brighter days ahead. We're hosting them at our team store because retail stores are open, so they can get a taste of the stadium. They go into the retail experience. they can exit and see the stadium, see the actual bowl. So it's a little taste of everything, but very enjoyable for our members.
It's interesting. I mean, I can only imagine the opportunity. I'm sure you went into last year planning for all the attention and media and buzz that would come with opening a new stadium. Somewhere you'd have the mayor with a big pair of scissors opening. All of that. And yet, maybe down the road, some of these affinity groups that these hardcore, there's no more hardcore than football fans. But some of these affinity groups, who knows, these could grow out into, online universes that persist for years. So in taking the measure of this period, it's going to be, we won't know for 5 years, 10 years, just like with most things involving technology and consumer behaviors. Katrina, can you kind of give us the 30,000 foot view? Because that, your Teradata is in the business of looking at consumer behavior and finding, tracking activity. I can only imagine the deluge of data and information that you and your analysts are sorting through on any given day. Can you talk about how your work has changed in the last year?
Sure. And thanks for the question, and thanks for having me. Cynthia, it's interesting because we enable organizations across all industries to access just this plethora of data that they have available across their different channels and customer engagement. But the majority of brands have been struggling if their primary business and revenue models are built around brick and mortar or live experiences with media and entertainment. How do they shift, right? But not only how do they shift, what's the data that's available to them that they can use as indicators or indices in returning back to normal to gauge maybe even theatrical release or park engagement? When can we return to the movies? And so one big thing that we took on for our customers is to aggregate all this public information in a large data set, focused specifically by industry to provide a view into, from a real-time perspective, how is social engagement, how is customer engagement changing? More information around the in-home and what the needs are, so that they could leverage that real-time, even health information around the pandemic and case outbreaks and location information to identify how do they shift and or prepare for the next new normal.
And that is, I think that's a phrase that we're hearing more and more, the next normal, as opposed to expecting that one magical day everything will go back to where it was March, somewhere around early March of last year. And that, Katrina, do you have any sense of like consumers coming to grips with that idea that we are not, that the new normal is going to be a hybrid of, it's going to not look like what we once had, but may not be as bad as as constricted as we've seen in the last couple of months, especially in places like LA and New York?
Yeah, I think consumers have, we've all had to adjust in our work lives and working remote, in our personal lives with our family and homeschooling, and the new entertainment. And, is gaming the new entertainment, or streaming, or subscription video on demand? Is that the new entertainment? And how do we engage? I think there will be a mix, but we also see that there's this great appetite. And the reason that you had mentioned earlier, and Simone talked to this, around community building and the importance of it, so that people have an outlet where they can go and either co-create, or they can consume or be exposed to content and information that they have specific interest in, or hobbies. And I think a great example of this is Peloton and the community that they built around exercising at home, and that ability, if you're not able to get out, depending on your location, even for a casual walk, how you can use that community to lean on during these hard times and changes that we're all experiencing.
Yeah, I would even, I think that's awesome, Katrina. And I would even add, it's funny because I think of it as probably us as marketers are having the more challenge. On our personal side, I think the adoption has happened, and I can't imagine a time when people are going to go back to not using the Peloton, not using Nike Training Club, not wanting delivery, not using Amazon Prime Now, like all of these things that have attributed to this pretty massive digital acceleration. I love that we use QR codes for menus now. Like there's just some really amazing things that were, you asked me 2 years ago, I'd be like, QR codes are dead. But we found a really purposeful way to leverage them. And I think there's all of these new habits. And I think where Katrina was going, it's like we're building on, and I think these are now becoming the base of how we operate. And, you mentioned, but I think it was like something like 10 years of digital acceleration in the first 6 months of the pandemic. It's like pretty staggering numbers. And then you think about then us as marketers, like it's harder for us to challenge those norms, I think, than the ones that us as consumers have been adopting to. And so I think it's really interesting because that's, for me, it's sort of that dichotomy of like the way I act, but then the way I behave and the way I serve those consumers. And I think all of us are trying to, steer some of these very large cruise ships to start ruddering towards this new normal that we know exists, but consumers, I think, are leading it.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to pick up on something that you said, Simone, that the importance of that consumers, especially younger consumers now, are expecting brands, big brands, to kind of articulate their values, to promote brand values that are not just, this is a quality shoe, but sort of what you stand for in the world. Obviously, social media can be a great place for discussion. It can be a fraught place for discussion. How do any of the panelists, when you're, I think of social media sometimes as almost like a fast moving freeway. And, you just gotta make sure you're in the swim, but there can be collisions. How do you weigh, expressing your voice in a particular area, as you were talking about, Josh, with students wanting to have voices in the social unrest that we've seen, sadly. I know, Dan, that's been NFL players have obviously had very strong thoughts about what's going on in the culture. When do you jump in, and how do you decide what you want to say in a forum where things can, it's the line between brilliant and tone deaf can sometimes be so thin.
Yeah,
I can speak for. Go ahead, Dan. Sorry to interrupt.
No. I think it's probably similar in a way. I think for us, we try and stay out of politics. That the main thing is stay out of politics, but what we do want to focus on is things that are close to our employees, our players. Social justice has been something that our team has been focused on, at least for my time here, and I think going back to St. Louis for the Rams as well. And what we want to do is, hey, our players deserve a voice. So Molly Higgins, who heads our community team, who's amazing, worked with our players to just really cultivate that and bring out of them what they wanted to do. Because I think there were anger at times, but it was how do you take that and lead to something great? We had a few of our players, they formed a social justice committee, and we backed them. They all put their own money in. We came up with places that it could go to, really ones that we thought were great places. And yeah, there's some fans who call in and say, stay out of this. Obviously, we have a large fan base, and it's a very diverse fan base, and people have their opinions. But what we really stuck by is this is what we believe in. It's for the good of people. This isn't left or right. This is what our players believe in. This is where we think the country is going, and we're really forward-looking in that. And we don't want to alienate. I've had to hop on the phone with people who are yelling at some of our service representatives about what we're doing. And we stick by, hey, we're a team that we had the first African-American player in the NFL, Kenny Washington, a UCLA guy. We had the first openly gay player in the NFL. We have the first male cheerleaders in the NFL. So for us, it's something that we've always done. And we just stick with that. It's like, we want you with us, but we can't change what we're doing as a team. And we're going to keep leading with that because it's what we believe in. Sorry about that, Josh.
If I just ask Dan, do you have conversations with players about their social strategy? Is that something that is a strategizing?
Yeah, no. So Molly on our team, she works very closely with the players. We have some great players. Andrew Whitworth is one who's been in the community for years. Sebastian Joseph Day, a bunch of others who really came together. And we help facilitate some of the things, but the players are very smart individuals. They come from a diverse set of backgrounds. They play with people who are obviously from so many different places. So what we want to do is just foster open communication and then help guide them towards the best 501c3s. And by best, I mean ones that seem legitimate, seem that they're doing a great thing in the community. The money's going towards the right thing. So it's really working with those guys to just help steer them, but really following what they want to do and what's in their minds.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah, Josh.
Yeah, I was gonna speak to Dan's point. I think we are a very proud of our history and tradition of being an extremely progressive university, a university that Jackie Robinson played 4 sports at, Rayford Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Jackie Jordan-Kersey, and Myers Drysdale. You go through the list of so many. They broke barriers, and we want to instill that in our student athletes today. It doesn't stop in 2021. That continues, and it's a continual progression. Kevin Love, who's a Bruin, who is on the forefront of mental health awareness in the NBA. All those different barrier breakers are so important to us. And so I think to your question about how do we support them? For us, student athletes are a little bit different than the professional athletes, of course. We try not to restrict them in any way, shape, or form. We also are very cognizant that we do represent many different backgrounds, and we want to be as equitable as possible when it comes to what and how we support things. Certainly via our social media. We recently had a Gymnast Go Viral. We had 2 in the last couple of weeks. We've had 7 gymnasts in the last 6 years go viral. Including Caitlin Ohashi, who had over 130 million views on YouTube, and they instantly go viral in their floor routine, and then they end up on the Ellen DeGeneres show or Oprah or the like, and they have these unbelievable opportunities. Nia Dennis is a student athlete of ours who just recently went viral for a Black excellence routine on the floor, where she had several African American artists representing her music, and then she choreographed that to her floor routine, which was amazing. These are the best student athletes. I could say this even to our football and men's basketball players. The gymnasts are by far the best student athletes on campus when it comes to talent. What they can do is amazing. But we support that. We absolutely support that. And we put into our social media post Black excellence, which to Dan's point, some of our fans don't love. I got to be quite frank. And some of them will call you and mention it to you, but you explain it. And you certainly, again, you go back to us for tradition, as the Rams have done. Over time, we've proven that we support, those that have some, different views of others, and those that are ultimately trying to do this for the greater good. And so it makes it working at UCLA an amazing opportunity and experience, because you get to be educated every day.
Yeah, and talk about brand values. Simone, in your line of work, you are marketing a product. How and there have been some very fraught times in the last 12 months. How have you demonstrated your brand values? How has Converse demonstrated its brand values during this period?
Yeah, not that dissimilar from what Josh and Dan have shared. And I think, for us, we actually in the last 18 months had gone through a pretty strong level set of what our consumer mission, vision, and position was. And within that, really identified a few key areas that were at our core belief system for Converse, which was diversity, inclusion, and sustainability. And we realized that there is a lot of other, many other values and issues that our audience and community is concerned about. And so it's really been about finding that overlap where it does make sense for us to be speaking up and speaking out and using our platform and amplifying also voices of people within our community, athletes we represent, as well as we have an ambassador community called the All-Star community, and elevating these people who are sort of micro influencers and making waves within the realms of social justice, inclusivity, and sustainability in themselves. So we've really sort of built the brand on these core pillars, and then have been building infrastructure around those to find ways to be making community impact. And and then with that, that really acts as our guardrails for when we are speaking up and out. And to the point of what you guys are saying, I also think we have to make sure that there is reason and backing for why we're speaking up, because otherwise consumers will say, what skin in the game do you have? Like, they're not expecting us to have a post on X, Y, or Z if it is not intrinsic to our values and we haven't been speaking up for those things before. So I think that's just something that even from an employee standpoint, because we do a lot of vetting with our employees, because they're really the core of the brand, and that is, we are the customers as well, and the community. And so we just want to make sure that the things we're saying actually can carry through into actions that we're taking as a brand as well.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned, and I know that just the sentiment is definitely growing, but there's a sense that younger, the millennial, the Gen Y, Gen Z, they actually want that in a brand. They want Converse to stand for sustainable forms of rubber or whatever, things like that. I mean, that is your understanding? I would love any thoughts from the panel about what the kind of the younger consumer expects from brands, especially brands that live large in the world.
I mean, I would just to answer your question, to me, I think it's a non-negotiable. It's table stakes that your brand stands for something at this point. Particularly with Gen Z, Y. I wouldn't even discount millennials in that. And they want transparency as well. If you make a statement, they are immediately going to ask you in the comments, then what are you doing?
Right.
When Converse and Nike Inc. and Jordan made a commitment to the Black community, it was immediately like, tell us what your board of directors looks like. Do you have, what about your executives? What are the communities that you're talking about? So I think the engagement that the community is willing to, they're going to keep you accountable. So I really think it's a non-negotiable.
I would agree with that. A lot of big brands that we work with, there's a difference between jumping on the bandwagon of what the current issue or crisis is and trying to promote that in your brand within social media or even different platforms. But people are looking for transparency, like you mentioned, Simone, authenticity in what they're doing and how they communicate and why. The other thing, which I think you touched on, is purpose-driven brands. Like, what's your purpose? Not just strictly alone to your mission statement as a company, but what are you trying to do? How are you trying to make the world better and how we work and or we play? And a lot of brands kind of sat back in a very smart approach to listening to social media and feedback and trying to understand what that sentiment was and how they might be able to engage with it in a purpose-driven way. And so I think I agree 100%. It's non-negotiable. It's a must-have.
I don't have the stat with me. I wish I did. Maybe someone in the audience could Google it. But we had done a study, and Gen Z actually thought brands had more skin in the game to better sustainability, to make shifts within social justice, and then the government. And it was pretty phenomenal that's how much connectivity, but also power that Gen Z believes that brands have.
What about outside of a more, social issue or kind of news driven, but just in general, sort of brand building and community building? How much is too much if you're trying to engage people? Because we all know the marketers that, you buy one thing and you just daily get the deluge. They lose, I won't name any names, but they lose credibility. They lose business from me because I will be like, oh my God, give it a rest. Like, how do you weigh how much, especially for for you, Dan, right now with the NFL or UCLA games, like no games at a time when you would be in the peak of interactions with your consumers. How do you weigh when to jump in and when not, even outside of, again, anything that could be controversial, but just in general brand building goals?
I'd say in general for us, there's the social media side, but then there's what you're really pushing them. It's trying to segment. Obviously with social media, you're not segmenting quite as much, besides these people are on Facebook, these are on Twitter, these on TikTok. But as we've looked at our email strategy, we've tried to break it down. We're like, if people aren't opening emails for a few weeks, we'll just start not sending them as many emails. So it's trying to get to a point where people aren't like, stop bothering me. And we try to have different things for different people. Like we have the things for our more avid fans, and then we'll try and create things for families with kids clubs, or for the less avid people where they want a passive game. So I think it's trying to meet the people where they are. I think Simone had said that at some point, maybe in a pre-calls, trying to make sure that you don't hit people up too much if they don't want it. But for us, and I think it's the same thing for UCLA sports, you have people who are just very, very into it and they can't get enough. And if they'll miss an email, if it's not the headline, and they're like, tell me everything I could do. Some guy was texting me because some of them wind up getting my phone number. He wanted to have game used jerseys. And I was like, oh, if you go to our auction site, that goes to our foundation and you could bid on those. And he was like, I didn't know you had an auction site. I would have been bidding on that every game. So like, there are those fanatics, and we need to find ways to feed them while not bothering the Cynthias of the world or others who might not want it quite as much.
Mm-hmm. Katrina, I think, go ahead, Josh.
I was just going to say, I think based on what Dan just said, I think it's really interesting to know that, obviously everybody looks at everything differently. You have so many unique perspectives, so it's very difficult to have a blanket approach. And I think you do have to, the good thing about even social media, how many times do you post a day and what do you post about? And then you look at the engagement. And if you're so caught up, I read some articles this weekend preparing for this presentation. And one of the quotes that I saw was, okay, it's great that you have all this engagement, but is it actually driving any business, right? And for us at UCLA, it's very difficult. We have little to no response when we post anything about ticket sales on our social media, but we get hundreds of thousands of likes and views and comments and such on a really cool performance or a very cool picture in the post game in the locker room. And so, but then, so then you've got to find, how do you take that engagement and turn it into actual business for us, which is getting butts in the seats, selling tickets, getting donations, getting investments into our program. It's a very difficult thing that over time, all of us being in the stages of our career, we've seen it where we've gone from no social media to now where it's so much social media. And then you survey your fans, and still for our demographic, and I'm sure it's similar to Dan's, I mean, our fan base, our buyer is 40 to 70 years old. It's not a 22-year-old. It just isn't. They don't have the time, resources, energy to go out to the Rose Bowl to go to a football game. They'll watch us, they'll support us, they'll love the Bruins, but they're not going to invest in us right now. And so we've learned that LA Times is still our biggest medium for getting the word out on game day, on the schedule, which seems archaic to anybody that would think, oh, newspaper, nobody reads the newspaper, right? But that's where our demographic still consumes. But our 22-year-old will learn about the game time on social media. They just won't come. They'll just watch it on TV or on video.
And then, but just wait till that person is a booster, and then you're right now. You're building
20 years
all
from
that
now.
affinity.
Right.
That's right. 20 years
You
from now.
gotta know your consumer.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of comes down to that. I'm not sure, Cynthia, what you were going to ask, but we work a lot with communication strategies across different channels, and social media, each one is unique and nuanced by the media that you're using to reach your audience. But the fundamental rule is, what do you know about your audience, and how are you leveraging your data across all of those channels to understand that 22-year-old, that 40-year-old, or that household who might have 3 or 4 different buyers within your industry. It all comes down to that, and knowing their profile and being able to understand it more in a real time. And I would say if there's one simple rule from a communication strategy, it's relevancy. It's relevancy dictates frequency. And most of our clients, we've talked about, what do you understand about the context of your customer, the profile, what are their affiliations? What are their interests? When did they last time engage with you? When and where and how and what on what device? And those are the things from a data and analytics that we work with our customers very specifically to help them understand, because you might have segments that you've used and a lot of different models to understand, your high priority or high value customer segments, but who are those that you may not even understand that they could be a very high value segment that you may not be tapping into just because you don't have exposure to them. So again, relevancy around context dictates frequency.
How much is, as Simone mentioned, there are all these platforms now, TikTok, Twitch, that have really, user-generated video has come a long way from sending, putting up cat videos and baby videos on YouTube. How much do you think that this is forgive me for saying, a game changer in terms of allowing consumers to express all kinds of creativities, but I think when I talk to marketers, people are like pleasantly shocked at how much consumers, everyday people, are into the idea of working with brands and building. The Cheerios campaign on TikTok was a good example that a TikTok executive pointed. The Cheerios had no idea when they encouraged people the tidal wave of content that would come up. And for marketers thinking impressions, oh my God, ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. Can you talk about how the rise, especially in these pandemic conditions, of these platforms with pretty sophisticated tools that can help spread a marketer's message, even if that's not entirely, even if creativity is the driving force for the actual creator of the content, the sort of everyday person that wants to put up a funny video on TikTok.
Yeah, I would just, I could start that one off for us. We've been having a great little round robin going with this crew. It's interesting because we just watched the Super Bowl recently, right? And you start thinking about the power of these anthemic films, like spots that people spend millions and millions of dollars on to create, and then the viewership and those really water cooler moments that happen, in live viewing moments. And Katrina brought this up as well, but like the evolution of, which we've been on this journey for a long time, of time-shifted viewing and on-demand viewing. And now I think this is a new ingredient that we have is, this co-creation and these impressions that you can drive from people creating Cheerios commercials or Walmart, or there's so many examples of just things that can hit virality and scale on these platforms. I'd love to offer another question though. It makes me think of what Josh was saying of just like, but those are impressions. Like, what is your actual KPI that you're looking for? And are those impressions like meaningful enough to like be driving the brand love? How are they moving people down the funnel? I think there absolutely have to be something that you're thinking of as part of the mix. But I think all of those platforms are so new, we're still having difficulty measuring how valuable they can be within a more traditional business model.
Katrina, have you seen, evolution in how people track the cause and effect, something that you do in the online space or a marketing campaign, and how that translates, weeks, months later to actual bottom line sales of a product or service?
Yeah. So we work with a lot of our customers around customer engagement and activation, or you could say conversion. And, when we're talking about user-generated content, if you just measure that against brand-specific messaging or marketing, user-generated content, even if it's as simple as ratings and reviews on products or services, outranks and outperforms any type of brand-specific marketing or communication, just fundamentally. But overall, we're just looking at how do we engage the customers with where they are, but it's first understanding where they are and what are they most interested in, right? And again, I would be interested to hear from all three of you on the panel about what kind of your challenges around data and understanding your fans or your consumers or your suspects in your marketable targeted audience. What do you understand about them? Because that's where we work in analytics to help people further understand and leverage. But we have to identify where the performance is now, fundamentally. And sometimes that's a moving target for most brands. I don't know, Simone, would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think our biggest challenge is just so many of these new quick, the pace at which these new platforms are coming on and the content is being created is like, just the infrastructure of getting that data harnessed is challenging. And we did, one of the things we did coming out of the pandemic was just onboard new tools just so we could do more listening and analysis of engagement. But you are very much limited to what is open, what's native, the walled gardens that exist on all of these, many of these platforms, and being able to actually like harness that data and parse it out can be, and connect it can be, I'd say, is one of the biggest challenges out there, is like, how open are they going to be with the information that so you can connect these pieces. But it doesn't mean we're not going to try, and I think we've had to do a lot of, it's interesting because you mentioned data, and it's like, as we've moved into a world where we had so much data that I think it almost shifted to like, you could make some really good and bad decisions because you are blinded by data, by raw numbers. And I can, for us, like, you could very easily chase the lifetime value consumer, and probably similar for you guys too, at the top of my screen with the LA Rams and UCLA, like, without growing your base and bringing in a new generation of fans or purchasers. But if you were like short term, like, how do I get the most revenue? The data tells me I should be going after a 38-year-old, mom of 3. Like, that's what the truth of it. But we have to spend, dollars and be on these new platforms to be connecting and bringing in a new audience that, we might partially have, or we hope that we can grow them in when they do have purchasing power. But I think I agree with you, Katrina. It's like so much about the brand. We kind of call it brand tech. Like, there was a point where it was like brand and performance marketing, and then brand formance when you really thought about like the whole marketing mix. And now it's like brand tech, like the technology that can enable you to build these like bonds and be able to measure frequency and to be able to be driving loyalty and top of mind. And that's really, I think all of us are probably going through that transition in our career as like technology becomes such a bigger part of marketing, not just digital marketing, just marketing in general.
Right.
I'm going to ask a variation of a question that came in from somebody in the audience. I want to ask, can you build passion for your brand online, or does it need to exist organically and you can tap into it and perhaps enhance it, or can you build it online yourself?
I think it's tough. I think just online for us, I mean, there's so many other elements, and I think sports in the in-person experience is where we can do so much more. Obviously, COVID has stopped some of that, but I think the in-person experience then helps that. So a full stadium, this has been an NFL thing for years, a full stadium looks so much better on TV than an empty stadium. Seeing people have fun makes you enjoy the game more. So hearing the crowds, hearing the chants that all these teams have. So you can do it. I just don't think you could do it with the same speed that you can in person, where you're really interacting with those people, seeing the smile on their face and leaving a lasting memory, which in sports, I think the lasting memories is what creates fandom. I don't think online social media has quite that impact for us, at least.
Yeah, I would agree to that. I think I was just going to say, I think in any of these situations, I think that social media is a supplement to the passion, right? And you can certainly enhance the passion. I think Dan's right. I think you got to have a base. Converse, I don't know, that business nearly what I should be talking about, but I would assume that if I've never touched or felt a Converse shoe or seen it on my feet, doesn't matter what I see on social media, I'm still not going to get the full effect. And so I think that's what Dan's talking about with the Rams and with us at UCLA, walking into Pauley Pavilion and seeing those banners and smelling that popcorn. I mean, that's the social. And then the other part of this whole thing, I think that, we all understand is the social aspect of it. There's a reason why the backyard barbecue has always been so popular. It's the way to get engaged with your neighbors and your family and your friends. And And while a sporting event may be the entertainment on the field, but even the Super Bowl the other night, I was talking to somebody yesterday about it. When we all got to see The Weeknd, that was the first concert that any of us have gone to in over a year or nearly a year, which is amazing to think about. Now, and I'm not, a closet Weeknd like groupie. I don't love The Weeknd or anything, but I thought it was really cool. I thought it was really cool, and it made me feel normal for those 8 minutes or whatever it was. And I don't care who the act would have been. And I give those guys credit, but that's what the Super Bowl to me did the other day. Is it made me feel normal, and it made me feel, again, it's gone the test of time of every human that's ever been on this earth. They have a need to be around others, and I think anytime any of our products, whether it's a shoe, or it's a game, it's a student athlete, it's a professional player, it's an opportunity for us to gather and support one thing and then do it together.
I would say I agree with you. I think there are some industries that are fortunate enough, though, that they've been able to take it to ride the boom. Katrina, looks like you were going to say something. I'll let you
well,
take over.
I was going to say the ones that have the advantage, I would say, they're digital native services like gaming, like online gaming, or even esports, right? It's going to be much easier for them because their entire experience is online, and social media and different platforms just amplify that more. So it's different than there's this blending that's happening between digital and physical. And I'm right there with you with sporting events and concerts and getting together. And I think that's what we were talking about in the beginning, is one of those things of where we're going. Are we starting to accept it? I think it's going to be, again, this blend of the advantages of both the physical and the digital, kind of a physical, if you will, digital experience. But, native digital and gaming, esports, they have an advantage with that social amplifier.
Yeah, one that I would add to that we've seen popping up a lot too is kind of this, I'm going to date myself right now, but like this new version of QVC, like live stream shopping is like booming in China, and it's actually starting to move towards the US. And the idea of limited products, the Network, that's an app that exists, actually founded out of LA, that has really capitalized on it. But it's totally interesting, because I would agree. I think some industries, you guys are definitely the tip of the spear with, like, you want to be in person, concerts, etc. But yeah, I've definitely seen some that have ridden that trajectory.
Do you think for live events that we will, at least for some time, or maybe for the long term, have kind of a hybrid model? I mean, now that we've seen that there are tools that can bring people into everything, to the Super Bowl, is that, I mean, it seems like it almost might be leaving money on the table if there wasn't some kind of virtual component built into things that would, we've seen tools that can open up events and performances and concerts to people that you couldn't imagine, that could never have possibly attended such a thing. Do you think, I'd be curious for Dan and Josh, do you think that any part of the virtual performance or virtual audience will persist in the future, in the happy times when we all have herd immunity and the public health crisis has abated?
I think it's there in the NFL. Concerts haven't had it, but we've had television the whole time. And I think you see for the NFL, we keep expanding more and more, where people can now watch on their phone more and more, whether it's through Paramount Plus, now Disney Plus, you name it. And then what the league is trying to do, where they expanded with Nickelodeon during one of the wild card games in the playoffs, and you saw slime go in the end zone as you're trying to reach that audience as well. So I think the expansion of where you are will continue, and I think you have to be smart with it and make sure you're not cannibalizing another part of your business. But when the two can work together, I think it's golden for the right team.
Josh, you must have people that are out of town that there could be a whole avenue for you now to reach people.
Yeah, I just think it extends your reach. You're exactly right. I mean, our arena or our football stadium only holds so many people. And ultimately there's going to be people left out. But as Dan mentioned, we've been battling this in our industry. We've been battling this digital impact for several years now, as televisions have gotten better and these camera angles are so awesome. I'm forced now to watch every game on television myself. I would have been there before, but now I'm watching it, and quite frankly, and I say this in a closed room. Hopefully, none of our fans are listening. It's almost a better experience, because I don't have to wait in line for the restroom. I don't have to battle traffic. I can go get a drink out of my own refrigerator. The television and the HD experience is so awesome. You feel like you're right in the middle of the game, and so that's where Dan and I and others in our industry and concerts, I don't think you can ever experience a concert on television like you can a football game or a basketball game. But I do think that we've had to continuously try to find ways to enhance the in-game experience to battle back the television experience. And we're generating revenue off the television experience, which is a tremendous asset for every one of us. But you also don't want to you don't want to cannibalize yourself and lose ticket sales due to the television experience being so good. So the digital thing for us, I think it's nothing new. I think it's something that we've got to continue to find a way to help them support one another.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I had a whole list of questions about the scintillating but important topic of privacy, which is also, the concerns of consumer privacy are going to be very important in all the sectors that we are talking about, but we are flat out of time. Thank you so much for your time and your thoughts. I thought this was a really robust conversation about a lot of disparate things. I am so grateful to everyone, and I have to say, as the daughter of a proud UCLA graduate, anthropology PhD 1961, somewhere Scott Littleton is smiling that his daughter is moderating a UCLA panel. Thank you all so much. Thank you to Jay for throwing this great event, and much to discuss in the future on all of these topics. Really appreciate your time and your insights.